Hey everybody, if you enjoy the podcast and the content it provides, be sure to hop over and check out the community. The community is an exclusive members website that is just an extension of what we do here in July at the Central Virginia Sport Performance Seminar. What it is a combination of video lectures, a coach's corner with your Monday morning take-home information, and a forum where you can talk about anything and everything related to the field of strength and conditioning. In the community, you'll find content added each month from some of the top practitioners in the world, ranging from PhDs to high-level coaches, bringing you exactly what they're doing with their athletes or their research at the present moment. On top of that, an additional discussion by coaches bringing you that Monday morning information, things that you can add to your training program right away. Tying that in with the opportunity to discuss with coaches around the world in the forum on anything and everything from the topics addressed in these presentations to whatever you're seeing in your daily life as a coach. If this sounds like the right thing for you and your staff, go ahead and hop over to cvasps.com/community and try it out for 48 hours for just $1. If you like it, you're signed up, ready to roll, and you're jumping into all the great content added each month. If not, feel free to go ahead and cancel at any time. No questions asked. We're really excited about what we're building in the community and hope you are too. Go ahead and hop over to cvasps.com/community and check it out today. Hello and welcome to another Central Virginia Sport Performance Podcast. Today I have the distinct pleasure of talking with 2013 presenter Henk Kraaijenhof. Hank was gracious enough to take some time out to answer some questions for us here at www.cvasps.com, along with the questions posted by our readers on our Facebook page. Hank, let's just jump right to it and get started here. The last time we talked, we spent a lot of the time talking about how you go about handling teams versus individuals. And when we were talking, you talked about setting up practice and how most of practice should be set for like that middle of the road.
Well, that's what most coaches do. It's the most easy thing to do because you have, let's say, 60-70% of your players there in the average player. If they weren't in the majority, then it wouldn't be average, I guess.
Right.
So that's a majority. It's easier to have a team with 30 kids and 20 of one are average. And sticking to the average, you can barely go wrong with them. The five top players, they don't do much. It's too little for them. They could handle much higher workloads. And the five ones that are the weak links in the team, you overload them. So it's logical and natural to go for the average player, for the I would almost call it the mediocre players. But of course, it doesn't give the full result because the best players feel neglected, undertrained, and also the players that are not that bad, they can handle the workload and maybe the weak links as far as workload is concerned, but you might need them anyway. If they get injured, they drop out, and you need another replacement in there with all the problems of that. So I always try in any team, if it's 5 people or 50 people, of course I understand that 50 people is much more work, to give them what they need. So give the best players an individual workout. The average player, which doesn't exist anyway, give them an individual workload and give the weak link is a little bit negative, but the players that are not as good and they might be very useful anyway. Give them what they need. So give everybody what they need and what they can handle. Right. Well, this is of course individualization of training, and this is also in team sport. There's a huge progress to be made. Individualization of training, and that's where the conditioning, of course, comes in.
So then, how do you determine which would be which? There may be one of your top players who may not be as fit, who may be in the lower end, the people that are being trained at too high a level, versus the individuals who may be getting too little training. How do you distinguish who goes to X, Y, and Z, and then how do you handle that situation?
Okay, it depends a little bit on the situation, the context, and the environment in itself, of course. But normally it's based on observation, what you already know about the players. That's the most easy thing to know. When you're a very strong player, physically strong in the sense of lifting weights and strength, strong in the sense of having a very good endurance, being able to run a lot of mileage during a game. Or strong could be mentally strong, being able to deal with stress. But that's just a rough sketch of it. You cannot base an individual program on that. So it mainly depends on testing. And depending on the level of sports, I understand that in American football you need a lot more maximum strength and speed than, for instance, in a game like, well, let me say basketball, or not ignoring the fact that speed and strength are important there as well, but not to the extent that it is in American football. Do you use gross motor skills or fine motor skills? Do you need it? You need to be very accurate in there. So it depends a little bit on the type of sport. But what you do is testing of the predominant energy system, testing of the predominant muscle groups, testing of the predominant necessities in order to perform in a sense of conditioning. And that's mainly independent of the technical and technical qualities, of course. So it means doing a lot of testing. And last week, a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, visited me. He's from Ireland, Fergus Connolly. He worked with the Welsh Rugby Union, and he worked with the Liverpool soccer team. And he's consulting to lots of sports. And the guy is a genius in monitoring and testing of individually based monitoring and testing of athletes in team sports. So we discussed a lot of ideas. We basically also decided to write a book together. Why not? And well, he refined his monitoring and testing skills to I must say the highest level. It's not only gathering data. Most coaches are just gathering data and they don't know what to do with it. It's also important that you know how to interpret the data, that norms, reference values, and that you know the real secret in that is also, well, I have a guy who is lifting a bench press, let me say, only 100 pounds. Well, okay, here we go. Yeah, he's weak. He's definitely weak compared to the others. But how do you make him stronger? That's always the secret. No matter how good your quality is how the quality of your diagnosis is, you need to interface between the diagnosis, the results, looking at it and say, yeah, but what am I going to do now to get this strength up? And this is the complexity of training and the challenge of training and the most interesting part of training, of course. It's like your omega wave system that I use. You can look at the results. Some things are up, some things are down. But what to do now?
Yeah.
Everybody can push a button and get a result. I can put your foot, you've broken your foot. I can put your foot in an MRI machine, push the button, I get a nice picture of it. But then, number one, I don't see a thing on it. I can't see if the foot is broken or not. To me, it looks all broken, pieces of bone there. And then, I am not a doctor. I don't know what to do to repair that ankle of yours. So this is the thing for the coach. Diagnosis is only a proper diagnosis, or a proper evaluation of the athlete on an individual basis, only the first part of the task. The second part is to fill the gap between the diagnosis, in German they say the Ist-Wert, like it is, and the Soll-Wert, how it should be. So you could say the is value and the should be value. So where do you go to? And that's the wide open field of training. It's basically unexplored territory still.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So everything that you're doing then, even with the middle of the road guys, to determine whether they're enough, not enough, too much,
Yeah.
is going to be based on a specific battery of tests that you're going to identify for this specific sporting discipline.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then everything that you're going to do based on that battery of tests is going to be based on what they can and can't handle what they do and don't need, and where they
Yeah.
are as opposed to where they should be.
Yeah, you don't have to have a detailed or deep knowledge of the sports, because I don't. Nor in field hockey, nor in ice hockey, nor in tennis, nor in, well, basically in any of the sports that I work with as a conditioning coach or as a consultant. Rugby, I don't have a deep understanding of rugby, leave alone, let me say, the rules of rugby, the very deep rules of rugby. I don't understand. But it's not necessary. You just look at it. You can find some data in some books. Some colleagues have gathered data over a lot of time. You talk to me, have an idea what the physical qualities here that are that a player in that kind of sports need. You don't need to be an astrophysicist in order to figure that out, I think.
That's awesome.
So that's very simple, I think.
Right. And that just goes back to the idea that we talked about last time, where no matter what, all the rules and theories and laws of biomechanics and physics and physiology, they're universal.
Yeah.
So when you know, our saying in our high school soccer team when I was growing up in upstate New York,
Yeah.
It kind of resonated with me, and it's stuck even more into how I handle athletes now, and that's do what the game demands.
Yeah.
You know, and it was kind of our motto, because I mean, football is so wavy, I guess would be
Yeah.
the word, that at
Yeah.
times you just need to alter how you play, and it's the same with how you prepare an athlete. I think is that there's, you know, Johnny over here might be X, Y, and Z, while Jenny over here could be A, B, and C. But at the end of the day, they probably need to be somewhere in LMNOP, like in the middle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
that's neat.
yeah.
That's neat.
Go ahead.
When you're here, I might have to actually sit down and just be like, let's go over all these tests, because let's see what you're picking up on that we're missing.
Yeah.
Um,
For instance, I have an example there. What is important that you make the right analysis of the sport, so do what the sport demands. But there's a lot of discussion what the sport demands. For instance, coming from sprints, we have different schools of sprints in the past. We had the Russian school of sprinting, and said, well, maximum strength is very important for sprinters. We had the Italian school of sprinting, which said, well, speed endurance is very important for sprinters, like Pietro Manea, the Manea school of the Vittori's company. We had the German school of sprinting, said, well, it's all drills and skills which are very important. Let's say if you look in the books and you can be confused. You look at 400 meter and you want to know which energy systems should I train. Then you look at Matthews and Fox or any book about physiology, and you say, well, 100 meter is mainly anaerobically. Yeah, okay, or that 95% anaerobically and only 5% aerobically. Then we go to the male, yeah, it's 95% aerobically and maybe 5% anaerobically. But when you come to the middle, like 400 meters or 800 meters, the mixture between aerobic and anaerobic, well, if you look at different books, you get different numbers. Because some books will tell you that the 400 meter is mainly an anaerobic event, 70% anaerobic and 30% aerobic. Another book will tell you it's 50-50, another book will tell you it's 40-60. So that's a shocker if you think that you will make a training program based on those numbers. So then you ask yourself, should I do more anaerobic work based on the 70-30 anaerobic? Or should I do more aerobic work based on the 40-60 aerobic work? So where does confusion come from? It depends, for instance, how fast you are running the 400 meters. So if you make an analysis on people like you and me, not even running, but jogging the 400 meters in 1 minute, it might be more aerobically because the oxygen has more time to get into our system, to our muscles. If we have a runner 43, 44 seconds, the oxygen not all the oxygen that is needed, and you use more oxygen anyway when you run that fast, gets into its place. So that might be, based on that analysis, it might be much more of an anaerobic event. So one thing, you gather the data from your own athletes and norms or references. But on the other hand, that's time-consuming work, need a lot of patience, it's probably a lot of years to gather all the data and to make a profile of your athlete. On the other hand, you can find it in books and articles, but you might go wrong. And in this case of the 400 meter, you might go wrong based on the assumption that it doesn't make a difference if you run the 400 meter in 43 seconds or in 63 seconds. It definitely makes a difference there.
Right. Wow. So I guess you just need to choose your references wisely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like always.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Seems like a law of life, isn't it?
Oh, ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
So then, when we look at that, and we're looking at the team and the individuals, and we go back to these evaluations, we know that that's how you implement your preparation. But is there anything else that goes into actually how you select the methods and the means that you're utilizing, both in a weight room and out of a weight room?
Well, look at what has been done in the past, and all of you. You just look around to your colleagues and see how much their programs differ from yours. In Holland, at least, we have, let's say, the national hockey team or the Olympic hockey team for the men, field hockey I'm talking about. Well, before it used to be the conditioning used to consist of weight training. Now you could say, well, we don't need weights. The only thing we need is to play hockey. So a very more specific approach. And if we do something, we do this with in a playing hockey with a weight vest and leave out all the general stuff, the not necessary stuff, the injury risky stuff like squats and leg presses for hockey players. Well, that's an interesting one. So even in the sports in which we in Holland are quite dominant in the field hockey, even in this sport at this level and with this long history, from year to year or from 4 years to 4 years, every Olympic coach has his own idea about the role of conditioning and what kind of conditioning. One says only we should lift weights and do squats and leg press, cleans and bench press, make these guys stronger, and the other guys say, no, we leave it out. The only thing we need to do is play more hockey. And also in soccer, we have the same trend towards what you call more specific, sport-specific training. Now, one coach here in Holland advocates only playing soccer. Only playing soccer 5 against 5, 5 minutes, and then a couple of minutes rest, and 5 against 5, and a couple of minutes rest, and again 5 against 5, and then as you get better and better, you 6 or 7 sets of playing 5 against 5 for 5-6 minutes. So it gives us all you need. It gives us endurance. It gives us technical and tactical qualities. It gives us speed, the speed that is needed, and it gives us strength, the strength that we need. We don't need to lift weights. We only need that's getting pretty popular in Holland right now. So much more specific approach. So you can only there are ideas that you can only improve very specific qualities by practicing that very specific quality in itself. I think there's a serious limitation there. There are many serious limitations there. I totally disagree with that, but that's another story.
The 5v5s is interesting to me.
As a conditioning, I can see it as tactical drills and skill. Yeah, fine. But as a way of conditioning, I believe that for endurance, if you are untrained, you can go a long way. I don't think it will increase your running speed or acceleration. Don't for sure. I know it doesn't increase your strength at all.
Yeah. Well, and even tactical wise, I don't know if. I mean, depending on the size of the grid, I mean, you're taking such a large element of the game out.
Yeah.
By putting them in a small grid all the time and having them play even numbers, not forcing people into defensive postures and roles. I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It is interesting, but it's an idea, a concept that gets more and more popularity right now.
Yeah.
It sounds plausible.
Yeah.
You need a leg press at 200 kilograms, you need to kick the ball. So why should I do the leg press?
Right.
Because you have a transfer of leg press, things you do in leg press, to the ball, and where transfer is loss of transfer as well. You have losses through every step in transfer. You got losses. So, yeah, how much of the leg press is transferred into kicking a ball more miles per hour or kilometers per hour? Good question. Good question. But I doubt if just kicking balls is a solution.
No, I agree. I agree. So then when we look, we also talked about the power output of 90%,
Yeah.
and that kind of being like your sort of rule, if we want to call it that, when we're looking at developing power in an athlete.
Yeah.
Other than the technology that you talked about, how else do you monitor this? You know, do you do everything with that system? Jumps, sprints, throws, lifting.
No, it's just basically only lifting.
Okay.
Well, the sprint speaks for itself. In the power output is a means to an end, and the end is running faster. In sprinters, it's running faster, not just generating power. It's running faster in a very specific movement, of course. It's different than the power output of a weightlifter, or leave alone the power output of a power lifter, because it's very low. That's a kind of a mistake. It's one of the few sports in which power barely plays a role, isn't it? Because it doesn't matter if you come up from a very deep squat in 2 seconds or in 20 seconds. So the velocity of the bar doesn't play a role. So powerlifting is a wrong term for the event. And in sprints you always look for the quality. The same concept applies to sprints. I prefer if people run for the blocks or standing start or flying runs, take time or electronic timing, then I prefer to have 4 good runs and 4 good runs, followed by 6 less good runs or less fast runs. So stick to the 4. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
I want to see 4 fast ones and not 4 fast ones, and then because fatigue, central nervous fatigue, or whatever, the speed is coming down. I don't need those because then I'm training in endurance and not speed anymore. And where does the injury come from? From the last 6. Where does the overload come from? From the last 6. Where does the overtraining come from? From the last 6, not from the first 4.
Right.
So in this way, I avoid injuries and overload. The body remembers best what it did last.
Yes.
That's a biological law. So if you do 4 good runs, it will remember number 4 as being one that felt very good, and one that's very fast. It will remember that one. If you cover that up with 6 runs which are less fast, or you're struggling, or you're tightening up during running, you will remember this the best. So the body will adapt to the bad runs rather than the good runs. So it applies to power training, absolutely. It applies to speed training or everything that demands quality, and power training as well. Power training and speed training. Of course, not to endurance training. If you run 10 times 300, then you want people to be tired and have a good running technique in the last as well. So you fight the fatigue, but that's part of the demand of the event. If you're a 400-meter runner, 800-meter runner, or 200-meter runner.
So basically, it's just a matter of looking and evaluating what they're doing, and as soon as things start to break down, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless once again you're training for endurance.
So that would be
for endurance. That's what you want. You want to induce fatigue and continue moving, be running or lifting despite that fatigue.
So that if we were to say there's an exception to that rule. So if we were to say there's an exception to the rule, we would say that when you're training fatigue, this rule really does not apply. Or when you're training endurance, this rule does not apply. But when we're training for movement quality and we're training for power output and speed, then this is the rule to apply.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well. Yeah. Very well.
Now, we also talked about fiber typing.
Yeah.
Does that have anything to do with this rule as well? And if so, how do you determine that?
Well, the first thing we did, I can show you a picture. I spent a lot of time and a lot of years looking at muscle fiber typing. Is it relevant? Is it significant? Is it reliable? Is it repeatable? Is it reproducible? Yeah, it is. And so we took biopsies from athletes. I have the whole procedure from pictures. You can see what happens during a biopsy. Also, the result of the biopsies with different colorings of the mitochondrial enzymes, the glycogen, the fat, and also the ATPase and different pH. So you can even see at the colored biopsy picture, you can see it yourself, what is fast and slow twitch. We also looked at hypertrophy factors and atrophy factors. Normal is this size. Hypertrophy factor is like this, and atrophy factor if atrophied because of disuse of muscles, for instance, or a disease. So there's always factors we took into account. You have to make muscle biopsies, which is a little bit limiting because of the costs and the risk of infection. Athletes stick their fingers in the little wound, but it's really it's an invasive procedure. It's absolutely true, but well, it's as invasive as filling a tooth. So that's about it. But I know for a large scale, for a whole team, for 50 guys, that's a little bit difficult right there. So we used the Bosco jump mat, and Carmelo Bosco in the past used to do the jumps and the biopsy, the jumps and the biopsy, the jumps and the biopsy. Found a very good relation between amount of fast twitch fast twitch fibers, the percentage fast twitch fibers, and the height of the jump. Well, nothing new. Yeah, because James Councilman found it probably 10 years before, just by simple jump and reach. So if you jump and reach was very high, you would spin through and you'd have well, if the jump and reach was low, you are more of a long distance swimmer. So this has been known for a long, long time. There's nothing new here. But what are you going to do with this? So we used the jump mat to make a very good estimation between fiber type and jump height, and well, you can base your training on that result. It makes a difference if you have a 80% fast twitch fiber and 20% slow twitch with all the subtypes, type 2B, type 2A, type 2C, type 1A or 1B. Then we take a second biopsy after a year, and you can see if the changes are going into the right direction. We have a long-term evaluation. So that's what we did in the past, in 1986, 87, that's hard.
Yeah.
It's a long way. There's
No.
another guy. Sorry.
Go ahead.
There's another guy who did a lot of work in that. It's of course it's Carmelo Bosco himself who did the testing in Italy, and Josef Tihani from Budapest in Hungary. And in that same time frame, 1986 to 1990, he did a lot of work on this as well. A training program based on the individual fiber type. But strange enough, it was not translated into English. I think it only is in Hungarian language and in German.
Oh.
And only the abstract of the journal is in English. But it's very interesting, of course, to take the muscle fiber composition as a leading parameter for establishing your weight training. Does that make sense? Because if you explode it, you want to increase the fast fibers in size, but not the slow fibers. If you're an endurance runner, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. And if you're a bodybuilder, you really don't care which side you blow up. It could be the fast ones or the slow ones. But especially in the fast events and the explosive events, it's very important because you don't want to hypertrophy the slow fibers too much.
So then looking at that in a team sport, though, with the possibility of having individuals who they're not going to be hugely separated on the spectrum, but you may teeter a little bit. Do you think that altering the training program based on those fiber types would be more proactive than just finding the goal of the training program based on the tests? Or would you implement kind of a right-left combination of the two? Mm-hmm. This is what we need. This is what we have. This is how we can improve what we have based on what we need on those tests.
Yeah, for me, the fiber type is dominant. It also depends on the task on the field. If you're in soccer, if you're a midfielder or a defensive player or an attacker, the fiber type differs. The midfield is running more, so has more of a slow fiber type, and the attacker is most of the sprinter, the fast guy, who has a faster fiber type. So then we also look at the testing, for instance, squats or leg press, which are relevant for these guys. And so let me say the dominant test is the fiber type. And on top of that, or below that, from which angle you approach, is the testing strength. Because they're not always related. Like I said, the power lifter has huge muscle, is very strong, but he might have slow fibers because he doesn't move that fast. And, well, there are some, no, not real sprinter, but 200 meter runners, 200 to 400 meter runners, don't have to have 80% fast twitch fiber because they would burn out too fast. So it differs there as well. And most people, of course, have a 50-50 type.
Right.
So the average, 50-50 is the average person. And we're talking vastus lateralis here, not the deltoid or whatever. Vastus lateralis is a marker muscle for all ways of movement, for running, swimming, cycling, speed skating, and basically anything.
That's great. That's awesome. That's
I have a lot of data. I have a lot of data on that. It's more than it's sometimes difficult to express myself in verbally in an abstract way. But I have the data to show the pictures and the graphs and everything. I collect a lot of data in the past. I'm a maniac in that. So.
Oh yeah, no. I think that you did a great job with it because what you basically are saying is we're going to look at the individual and see what we're actually working with, and then we're going to look at the team sport and see what we actually need to do. And then we're going to look and see what can we do with that individual, what they're made of, to make them perform what's required at a higher level at the actual sporting discipline. I mean, you're not going to make a painting out of clay, you know, and you're not going to make a sculpture on a canvas.
No, exactly.
You know, and it's that's really when you're here.
As a national coach, and what's kind of everybody hated me for doing that. I don't know. Maybe it was a technique, something invasive, something that had never been done. But I thought I was responsible as a national coach for the sprinting events in Holland, and I found it almost impossible to turn a donkey into a racehorse, or to participate in a Formula One race with a jeep. So by taking a biopsy, you just lift the hood and see what kind of engine is in there. You can see it from the outside. You can see the times, but if you have girls running 12 seconds, you might also run that with 50% fast twitch fibers. It also means that you'll never run under 11 seconds. The 50% fiber doesn't prohibit you to run 12 seconds, but prohibits you to limit you to run under 11 seconds. So by taking the muscle biopsy, it would save the federation money, which isn't that important. It would save my time, which isn't that important. That's the only thing I had at that time. But it saves the athlete from injuries. Try to drive a Formula One race with a Jeep. What happens? After one lap, you blow up the engine. That means injuries for the athletes. So I had to tell athletes to go to shift towards a longer and slower event to 400 meters because they had 50% of fast twitch fibers. And you can not only see from the fibers itself, also from the size of the fibers, which fibers you tapped into, which ones you trained or not, because slow and fast have basically the same diameter when you start. And then you start to make sure the fast twitch fibers hypertrophy. When you do too much endurance running as an athlete, as a sprinter, you can see the slow fibers hypertrophy, but you can also see the mitochondria, which you can color through a special chemical treatment. You can color the mitochondria, and you will see them shift towards the outside. Normally, they're evenly dispersed throughout the fiber. If you don't do too much aerobic work in endurance athletes, you will see the mitochondria form a ring on the outside, because then the fusion distance to the capillaries is much smaller. It's much more efficient to be close to the side of the mitochondria than it is to be in the middle. So you can see a ring of mitochondria here, and the inside is kind of white. There's no mitochondria left. That's what you see in extreme endurance runners. So mitochondria shift to the outside of the cell to be closer to the where the oxygen comes in. So that's something else to see. people trained right or wrong in the past.
I bet that's really neat to look at.
It is. I have the pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It sounds like magic. Look at the pictures and okay. In school, I bet you were better in the 60 meters at school as a junior than in the Cooper test. Oh yeah, how do you know? Okay, but you run in the winter. You always run crosses or long distance running, did you? Yeah, how do you know? Well, look at look at one picture of the biopsy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, if I could, I would. Let me tell you, I'd walk around with a little needle almost every other day.
Biopsy all the time.
Yeah.
Well, it's still pretty popular in Sweden, for instance. It's pretty popular. It's no big deal. People do it for cross-country skiers. It's a normal procedure. It's nothing. I see in the US with suing your doctor if something is wrong. The system that's not. Yeah, it's only something for the US, I guess. In Europe, that's not that usual to sue your doctor. He's a human being too and make mistakes just like you do. So, but.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't write a master's thesis without going through an internal review board to make sure it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. But it's all. I wrote an article in Dutch. It's the culture of anxiety. Everything is based on anxiety nowadays.
Oh yeah.
You know, anxiety is the main characteristic of the Homo sapiens right now. It's an anxious animal.
Yeah.
Based on fears, justified or not, but we are guided and governed by anxiety. So, and then you have all kinds of rules to give you the unjustified feeling of security and safety.
Yeah.
Of course, rules don't take care of security and safety at all.
No.
We know that for a long time. You can see it every day.
And as a matter of fact, it probably contributes worse to it.
Yeah.
That's why people should read Sapolsky's book. So then, kind of coming back to looking at the track and field athlete or the athletics athlete, if we are looking at how you develop those workouts, since there's so many different qualities that go into the race, the start and acceleration and the top end speed and maintaining the speed, kind of thinking about it in that 90% rule that we were talking about earlier, do you separate those in a training session? Meaning, do you focus primarily on, if you got a 100-meter sprinter, is it the first 15, 20 meters and then the middle 40 and then the final 40? Or do you just say, we're going to work a 100-meter sprinter and all of these qualities are so intertwined that we're going to work them all at once?
Well, not all at once, of course, because then some things have a positive interaction and some things have a negative interaction. Speed endurance has negative interaction with power and speed. If you do too much speed endurance work, there is always some slow fibers involved. That's number one. It's a funny story. There's always this discussion like before. What is more important? Is it in physical qualities like strength? The Russians focus much on strength. The Italians on speed endurance. The Germans or technique and coordination. Or is it on which part of the race? Now, the longest part of the race and probably the most important part of the race is the acceleration phase there. Because if you're a good athlete, you can always extend it to 60 meters. The higher the acceleration is, the better your acceleration, the higher your maximum speed is. And the higher your acceleration is, and the longer your acceleration. And the higher your maximum speed, and the later the less time there is to lose speed anyway. So if your acceleration phase is 30 meters, then your maximum speed you maintain for 30 meters, then after 60 meters, it's downhill from there, or I would say uphill from there.
Yeah.
The speed is going down in the last 40 meters. But if you accelerate for 60 meters and maintain your maximum speed for another 30 meters, then it's only 10 meters to lose speed anyway. So the better you become, the more important the acceleration phase becomes. Or you can say, well, the worse you are as a sprinter, the more important acceleration becomes. Because that's where you gain from 30 meters to 60 meters. So acceleration is always king. It sets you up for a high maximum speed, and both set you up for having less dealing with fatigue and with speed endurance. But the funny thing is, look at reaction time. Reaction time. So, reaction time. How much difference does it make? But if you look at the tape, if you look at the finish, then you see races are won and lost in the hundreds or 200 of seconds. And it might be that you already lost them at the before you made the first step out of the blocks. So 180 milliseconds or 140 milliseconds, it's 400 of a second. So if your reaction time is 1800 of 180 milliseconds, you might have lost the race. Just when the gun went, you already lost the race right there. So it is important. You can say what is important. The thing is what is important for you, and the other thing is what is important for you at that time in your race, in your development, in your career. So those are the main questions. It's not that per se strength is more important than endurance. It's not that acceleration is more important than the reaction time. It depends on the dynamic picture of you and your opponents. So it's not being diffuse or vague, but could you say, well, it depends a little bit. You have to take in many things into account and your vision into account. In general, I'd say acceleration is important. That means explosive strength and strength are the most important qualities right there. But if that would be absolutely true, then powerlifters and weightlifters and shot putters would be our best 100-meter runners. So to a certain extent, explosive strength and power are important. To another extent, of course, it's not. Otherwise, we would see 120 kilogram guys at the tape way ahead.
Mm-hmm. And it's probably safe to assume that this is the same approach that you would take with a team sport athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There is no difference. The only thing is you do it all together. The only difference is of course, the group dynamics and the attitude. There's the Ringelmann effect. I always use that for team sports. The Ringelmann effect. The more people are involved in the task, the less the individual contribution is to the task. It's like in rope pulling. The 1 against 1, you give 100%. Now you do it 2 against 2. And you measure again on a force inducer. You measure again, 2 guys. It's only 95% of the individual contribution. And if you do 10 guys, it's only 80% of the individual contribution. We can, there's 9 other guys. Mm-hmm. So that's an important aspect of team sport. So it's always important to bridge that gap from 80% to 100%. So motivation and mindset are important things in team sport as well. It's often neglected, but individual contribution could be the most limiting factor. Everybody is relying on somebody else to do the job. That's not very good.
Yeah. So kind of coming in with that, I think that the neat part is you talk about how the Russians said that the special strengths were really important, and the Italians had a different mindset, and then the Germans were German, and it's technique, skill, practice, regiment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of funny how it always kind of comes back to the middle, and the answer's pretty much, well, yes. For all 3 of them, it's
exactly. Don't forget, in the 1980s we had this famous and notorious duel between Carl Lewis and Ben Johnson, and coaches looked at Ben Johnson and said, Henk, you know what I think is important is strength. Look how strong Ben Johnson is. Look how much he bench press and how much he squats. I think strength is the most important factor. Another coach came up to me and said, Henk, I think it's relaxation and technique. Those are the only things that are important. Look at Carl Lewis, how relaxed he is. What do you think? He said, well, it depends. If your foot hits a track, you better be strong. If you're in the air, you'd better be relaxed. So it's the quick succession of strength, of applying strength and the relaxation at the same time. So it's not one or the other. Most of the time, it's most. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. So then, we also talked last time about the 10,000 hour rule. And I think that talking about the technique, this kind of leads in really well. And I think that our discussion so far has really kind of led to this. Obviously, an athlete's individual improvement or rate of improvement is going to be almost as individual as their DNA itself.
Yeah.
But how much of a role can you see, like the outside preparation and conditioning and strength and all of that? Actually, where do you see that role in accelerating the actual development of the athlete?
Uh, Let me see. Can you explain a little bit more what you
Well,
you mean
with the
speeding up the learning process?
yeah, well, and improving just how they perform. Speeding up the learning process, performance improvement. Where do you see this role of conditioning in that sort of? I mean, I guess kind of combining the Germans and the Russians, how they talked about the process of attaining sport mastery. Where do you see kind of the general and then the specialized training ideas away
Yeah.
from the actual technical tactical work?
Yeah.
How big of a role do you see that playing, and where do you see that role being most important?
Well, another factor comes into play. That's the mental aspect of training and coaching as well. Um, don't forget, we need successes. We need that little squirt of dopamine in our brains to say, yes, this felt good, this is okay, I won that competition. It increases dopamine as a reward. It increases testosterone if you win. It decreases testosterone and increases cortisol when you lose. So the mental aspect of even the mental aspect of conditioning is I think very important. And you, it's very hard to just work very hard without any sign of progress. Even testing might be a reward. So you know they worked hard, and they say, okay, today we're going to do a time trial, or we do a test to show them there's progress, that their work paid off. Even if it's indirectly just in a test or a time trial, not in a competition, that is very important. So you always give them the feeling of being successful, of making headway, of going forward, and just as stepping on the place and not knowing where to go, and did I improve? So it's also important to combine all those things once in a while together. It's important as a shot putter that you do well in the bench press, but you're still curious what you will do in the shot put in itself. You know, that you gained 40 pounds in the bench press is interesting, but it might not necessarily mean that you throw the shot much further. And it's the environment you create as a coach as well. That's what separates, I think, the excellence in coaches like John Wooden or well, mention all the coaches, especially in team sport. That creates an environment of fruitful work, of success, and create the necessary conditions for it in all aspects. It sounds a little bit esoteric, but it's definitely not. Definitely not. If you're always rough and tough and giving negative feedback to your athletes, it doesn't really help. So you have to give them that little bit of success once in a while. Yeah, the horse wants a little candy once in a while. You know, that's an important one. And you can reach that by testing or time trials or well, stimulating that. It's not magic, but it's still magic because everybody knows, but few people do it. And this is my main problem in sports. A lot of coaches know a lot of things. The only thing is they forget to apply it to themselves. And everybody says, yeah, of course we know it. Of course, no, it speaks for itself. When you see what they do, look at their behavior, observe them, it's not what they're doing. They're doing something else than they think they are doing. This is their blind spot most of the time. So it seems very obvious, but in real practice, in real life, it's not very obvious.
Right.
No, it's like everybody eats well. But are you eating? How's your? Oh no, we always eat fresh vegetables and fresh fruits. And well, where are the people with the wrong diet then? With the bad diets? I never encountered athletes that are eating terrible. Never. Where are they? They do not seem to exist because everybody thinks they are eating well. It's a blind spot we have for ourselves, and coaches do the same thing, of course. And I said, well, I'm so careful with my athletes. I seldom have injuries. And I said, okay, hey, where's this guy? Oh, he's just coming back from a surgery. Oh, is he? Oh, no, they all at a physio because they have a little bit of problem with their Achilles tendon. So that's contrary to what they said before. They're taking good care of the athletes and they seldom encounter injuries. When you look at the hard data, there it is.
Yeah. Well, so then let's talk about with your
But you can ask another question if you want to about this.
yeah.
I know you want another. You have another question or have another answer. We're not
Yeah, no.
done with this yet.
So I like that though. That's really that wasn't the direction I was going, but that's interesting. Is understanding that as you said, the horse likes candy, but I'd even almost say it like you can dangle the carrot in front of the horse for only so long before the thing better eat it.
Exactly.
You know.
That's the right expression. Yeah.
Um, but looking at like you said with the Dutch hockey team right now, all they're doing, or they have done, or different coaches have said, it's all about we need to play hockey, hockey, hockey. That's how we're going to get better.
Yeah.
With a coach like that versus the coaches that you were saying, they want him to be stronger in the squat and the bench and yada yada yada. Some would say general. Some could say there's some general specific training. Some could say specialized exercise. Where do you feel that sort of work? Like, how big of a role does that have in accelerating the athlete's ability to perform at a higher level? The conditioning aspect.
Yeah, I was just thinking today to write an article about it. I have a lot of. It's already written in my head, but I have to put it on paper now. It's just a matter of sitting for one afternoon. It's the subtle balance between repetitions, the same movement all over, to get it as a automatized at one hand, and the variation at the other hand. You don't need to vary. If you only do the shot put with a 7 kilos, then the learning effect levels off, and your performance level off. So then you do it with the heavier weight, the Bondarchuk thing with the 9 kilos, or with the 6 and 5 kilograms hammer. Okay, you have to do that. On the other hand, if you only start swinging with a 5 kilogram hammer, if you only do with the 9 kilograms hammer, what happens with the 7 kilograms then? So you need to do a certain amount of repetition in order to automatize the movement. It could be open or closed skill. It doesn't make a difference. So you can handle that specific skill. And shot put is doing the shot put. It's pretty much the same all the time. And in soccer is just heading the ball at the right place and not with your ear. There's many things to do in an open skill movement like basketball or soccer or any other ball sports or team sport, of course. But you need to automatize on one hand, and on the other hand, for me, there's always a question: is a movement the same or not? People say you should have variation, much more variation in there. But research shows if you have a hammer and you hammer a nail 20 times, when you look at it very closely, not one movement is exactly the same. It's almost impossible to make the same movement again. So there is a variation already there. Even if it's limited, you never cross the same river twice, but you never hit the same nail with the same hammer the second time. It's a different movement in there if you look at it. That's one thing. So how many repetitions should you make before a movement is automatized? And if it's automatized, it could mean that you only can execute this movement and no other movements anymore. Or is there transfer to movements which are related? So that's a very fine balance.
Right.
A very fine balance, and both extremes are wrong. If you only repeat, you get to a motor stereotype, and your performance will level off. If you only beat around the bush and do all kinds of nice drills, but never practice the whole thing, the whole competition movement, you won't do it. In Holland, we had hurdlers, and they were the kings of drills. They could actually tray leg, lead leg. They could often, but when it comes to real hurdling, clearing the hurdle with the competition, couldn't do it. And they looked flawless when they executed all those drills. So they were the kings of drills. Also in all the sprinting drills, you can people who do drills and skips and hops and ABC drills and any drill, perfect to perfection, textbook. When you see him sprinting, it doesn't look like anything. So here's again this fine balance between variation at one hand. Don't vary to vary, make a variation in your workout with a certain goal to it. And not just vary to have a wide spectrum of exercises. So, now I come up to excite athletes, otherwise my workout looks bored. That's not the meaning of variation of training. It should always be geared towards a goal. If you know what the purpose is of this variation, that's better than you just do something just to fill your time.
Ah, now that's a great, interesting point. So what you're saying is to vary an exercise or to vary a program for the sake of what I would can we call it mental health?
Yeah. Avoiding boredom.
Yeah, is really garbage if it doesn't keep you on task to reach your final destination.
Yeah, you see it in the weight room most of the time,
Yes. But no, and coming back to what you just said, I think that's pretty awesome because, there was another question that was given to us by a reader that was basically, how much technical work do you feel is necessary or overkill to improve speed? And if I could interject, I have a feeling that the answer is going to be the amount of technical work that is necessary is the amount of technical work that is necessary, and anything more than that is overkill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you look at my athlete, you will see they all have some schools of coaches in sprinting. You can see where they come from. You look at the athlete, you see who the coach is, because they all run the same way. If you look at my athletes, you can't say where they come from, because they all run according to their own muscle fiber type, body structure, muscle fiber type, anatomic individual differences. I respect the individual difference between and don't the individual difference between humans, and don't try to push them into the matrix that I made up in my mind to make things easier for myself. So one I learned this in my first year of coaching. I was very young, I was 22 years old, and started at a club. I didn't want to be a coach, but I kind of twisted my arm to be a coach, and it's really. And there was a young kid, and he was a triple jumper, and he was always walking, can you see, so like toes out, toes out, toes out. And every drill that he did was toes out, toes out. But in the triple jump, you go from this foot to this foot, you take off in this direction. So you're losing distance there. And then I had a brilliant idea. Making do drills and jumps over a white line, just the lines on the track. Keep your foot parallel to the line. And he did. Tuck, 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 parallel line. Came walking back and said, Henk, did it look any way good? So, I know. Then, a friend of mine, an orthopedic surgeon, I said, this guy is, and he knew the athlete that we talked about. He said, I have a big problem with his feet toeing out. And then I said, there's no problem, because we can solve it pretty simple. He said, we can make sure that his feet turn this way. And really? Yeah, so it takes a 5-hour surgery to do that. I mean, that's one leg. The other leg takes another 5 hours surgery to change everything, because, it's anatomically. Because there was no muscle imbalance. Of course, we look at the muscle imbalance as well. Hip rotators and everything. No muscle imbalance, but just the anatomical abnormality, as a matter of fact. So now you can change try the rest of your life to make his foot point forward, but of course it's useless. It's against his abnormality. This is one of the problems. Sometimes you try to change things which you cannot change, because it's against the way this person is built. It's again trying to make this Jeep run Formula One by stepping way down on the accelerator, stepping all the way down. Well, you can do that, but it doesn't really help you to win that race.
That's a great analogy.
Again, here the same thing applies. For instance, I coached Mary Pierce. She was a tennis player for conditioning, and then again, the same thing. How much soccer players and tennis players and also table tennis players, most ball sports have something like, well, if they don't practice with the ball or with the tennis racket or for 2 days, they've lost it. They've lost it. And they, well, even if you wanted to lose it, you can't. If you put you in a box for 6 years with oxygen and food and everything, and you can't move, you come out and still play tennis, and you still play soccer, apart from the muscle atrophy, of course. But you don't lose that, even if you wanted to. How can you lose it in 2 days? How many balls do you hit during a day? Well, hundreds of them, or probably 1,000 balls during that time. How can you lose that in 2 days? Now, what they really mean is the fine coordination. The fine coordination is gone a little bit. So my question is, how many balls do you need to hit before you got it back? Well, I found out in practice there was very little. You hit the ball for 10, 20 balls, and it's there again. So then that basically meant that I could save 2 days of hitting the ball, avoiding injuries in the shoulder or in the wrist or in the elbow or back injuries, avoiding that by doing less technical training instead of just, let me say, pointlessly and without any proper goal, just hitting balls to hit the ball. To what? To standardize it, like I said, every ball is a different one. So you don't really standardize it. Every ball has a different angle, has a different speed, has a different goal in the end, where you hit it and where you want it to go. So every ball is different. So you don't really standardize things or automatize things. It's just an idea.
Right.
Just in their mind that it's again based on anxiety. Like I said, I was a high jumper. I only jumped 2 meters, but at least I tried. And then one day I started, based on the books of Verkhoshansky at that time, 1976, 77, I started to lift weights. We discovered weight training. And then I started to squats. And then I thought, well, squats, yeah, that's good, but you also need your glutes, exercise, and calf muscles, because you'll take off plantar extension. Okay. But then you do the abdominal exercises, that's 4. But when you do abdominals, you also need to do back exercise, 5. And then you need hamstring exercise as well. Where you have a quad, you have a hamstring to keep the balance. And when you have a calf, you have a tibialis anterior. But then my upper body needs to be in good shape as well, so I do the bench press. But also the biceps. I ended up for the high jump doing wrist curls in the end to be complete. So I ended up in the weight room for 2 hours and a half doing wrist curls. What? To keep the balance in my body, so all the muscles were evenly trained. Well, just leading to overload, you only need 3-4 exercises, and basically that's it. And then you can, if you want to improve that mental health, you can do something else, step-ups or lunges or whatever exercise. You can do military press. Hey, it's fine to do it once in a while, but always keep in mind that we always try to be complete as coaches, our own anxiety most of the time, that they want to be complete. You don't leave anything to chance, and you won't want to say we didn't give it everything we had. So those are the 2 main drivers in coaches. We are control freaks and most of the time perfectionists. And that leaves us, and if you don't, then we turn anxious. So, well, could be 1 rep more, 1 exercise more. What does it harm? No, it never harms you in the long term. In the short term, it always harms you in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the key of training, I think.
Yeah. No, that's a fantastic point. And it's so looking at that when you're selecting exercises. Do you utilize any specialized work? Do you utilize any specific exercises to enhance techniques and skills in that manner to help the athletes develop?
You mean weight exercises or specific or specialized strength exercises?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I do, of course. I'm a keen follower from the very beginning, 1976 already, of Verkhoshansky with complex training and so on. And I believe in a balanced approach of qualities and a balanced enhancement of qualities. If you don't overdo it to maximum strength, you come to the track and you can't sprint anymore. That's the. Or if you just overdo it and don't combine it with them. For instance, another thing is that tennis players are also afraid that lifting weights will make them slower and less flexible and lose the fine coordination, which is true if you lift weights, let me say, 15 hours a week, and not hitting any tennis balls during the week. You do this for a year, you might have lost something, absolutely. You might have turned into a weightlifter or a bodybuilder. But when you still hit hundreds of balls at daytime, you don't have to be afraid that you lose that fine coordination, because you would notice it immediately the next day. So that's not true. But I think that one hand you have a foundation of maximum strength, like everybody kind of knows. Then you need explosive strength or power, which are very closely related, because it's maximum acceleration of the bar and of yourself. And then still you need to have that one step of transfer from this explosive strength to a more let's say specific movement, like jumping, like bounding. So you start with squats, then you do the hurdle bounding, then you do the bounding, the horizontal bounding, and then you get into the blocks. But that's average. That's average, because think about it, we used to do this complex training according to Verkhoshansky. That is a kind of a complex. And then you repeat it again, one set of squats, one set of hurling, one set of bounding, and then starting. And then again, then you repeat it, that's original complex training. And but if you have fast twitch fibers, and here comes the fiber type into play very nicely. If you have fast twitch fibers, and first you do squats, or for heavy squats, around 90% of your 1 RM, or you do power squats, it doesn't matter. What do you want to do? You want to basically tap into the fast fibers. By tapping into the fast fibers, you need to recruit them. Then you do the bounding over hurdles, 2-leg bounding over hurdles. What fiber type do you use? Fast fibers. Then you do the bounding, horizontal bounding. For instance, 10 jumps for maximum distance, 30, 31 meters or 35 meters. What do you use? Fast fibers. By the time you get it to the blocks, fast fibers run out of fuel. Mm-hmm. So I noticed for people with lots of fast fibers, the complex training didn't work. Because by the time you get to the core of what you really want to improve, you already, on the way there, you already burnt the fast twitch fibers. They run out of fuel. So the complex training mainly works for people with fast fibers. We just first do starts, and then the weightlifting after, for this reason. So they can use the fast fibers for the main course, and that was the starting, improving the start. And then the weightlifting you can do after for the fast fibers that are left. For the people with more slow fibers, they responded better to doing weights before and then do the starts. So that was an interesting observation. But you know what? I didn't do any scientific research on it. I only have basic research to support this. Why not? Because it's only 4, 5, 6, 7 people I tried with, and it's only case studies. It's not a double-blind, placebo-controlled study with lots of people. We don't have much people of that quality that I used to work with. But it was an interesting idea. Also, again, based on fiber types.
That is pretty neat.
So the order of your exercises: first strength, and then doing the starts, or first starts and then doing the strength. Because, like I said, in the complex training of Verkhoshansky that he promoted in the 1970s and 80s, that didn't work for fast athletes. But don't forget, he worked with Russians. He never worked with Caribbeans or with Africans. So yeah, for Russian athletes that might work. That's also the cultural and geographical and also the biological background of training with the Russians. Oh, where do you find a guy running under 10:20 in Russia? Or a girl running under 11 seconds? You don't. Because it was all based on slow fiber or 50% fiber. No, you don't find many people with 80% fast twitch fibers or 70% fast twitch fibers in Russia at least. So your training programs and your whole concepts are based around that specific type of athlete that you find there. That's an interesting one.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
But looking at like specialized exercise for technique.
Yeah.
So, because you mentioned like Bondarchuk with the the 7 kilo throws versus the 8 9s versus the 5 6s.
Yeah.
Have you utilized any specialized exercises for technique? You talked about the Dutch hurdlers and how they were great with all their technical drills, but they couldn't put
Yeah.
it all together at the end.
Yeah.
Do you practice anything like that?
Yeah, basically depending on the level of athlete, quite a lot, because then you're always closer to the ultimate purpose of training, that is improving people in which you are. So let's say it's sprinting with a strength character. Well, uphill running, for instance, running with a harness. I think it's very important. The best way to improve acceleration, apart from standing starts and from the blocks, it's of course running with a harness over 30 meters. That's the best way to improve acceleration. There's not much uphill running, but most hills you can't wear spikes on a hill. It's asphalt or tarmac or grass even. So the most specific way is to run with a harness or a little sled, with weights on there, and then those kind of things. That's in sprinting the most important one. For I found that if you look at specific exercises, then here comes the key question: what is specific? When is an exercise specific, and when is it a general exercise? And again, the 10% rule applies. I come up with this 10% rule again, and this is an important one. Yeah. Take a simple example. You run flat. Okay, you have certain stride length, certain contact time, certain stride frequency. Now you run uphill. Stride length decreases because you're going uphill. Contact time increases because you have to push a little bit longer. And stride frequency, it depends a little bit because they're shorter. But it depends on the angle of the hill. Now the best athletes, they could maintain their sprinting technique even on the hill on this angle. But if you're not a very good athlete, you will have the feeling of pushing a car already when it is this angle. So the optimum angle depends on the quality of the athlete. Same applies to downhill running. Mm-hmm. When you have a mediocre athlete, you run downhill this. You go, stepping on the brake, landing on the heel, leaning backwards and yelling. And we have a good elite athlete, they can run downhill and maintain that technique even when it's very steep. So they have a wider bandwidth in which they can still perform well. So I think that's important. That's one of the variations you always do. So I like variation, but variation to a purpose, right. And not variation to vary in itself or to vary to prevent boredom. If you're looking at boredom, get a job.
Yeah.
Get a job.
Yeah. No doubt about that.
Then you will talk about boredom again, or this is boring. Some people have a attention span of a couple of minutes only, and to please them, then you come up with something. Well, you shouldn't be in track because it's really, really, really boring. It's really boring. Doing the same thing all over. Right, take this 7 kilogram ball, try to throw it as far as you can, and do this for the next 14 years. Is that fun? If you can handle it, go and find a decent job or find another sport because that's boring. It's boring. Play tennis just for fun. There's no play element in athletics. There's no play element in there.
No.
You do not do shopping for fun. You do it because your fun comes from performance, not because the movement is so cool because you throw the shot 100 times a day and that's it. That's not fun after all. There's a different kind of motivation in there. So don't vary for variation only. If you look at specific, so looking at specificity of an exercise, it should look like the competition movement. We know how the competition movement looks like. We should use the same muscle groups. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Same muscle groups. We should use the same muscle fibers, basically. Fast twitch or slow twitch. If in competition is based on using slow twitch, and in training, using fast twitch doesn't really help you. It's even worse the other way around. Running a marathon, even if you have the running skill in the running movement in there, the running stride in there, it doesn't help you to run the sprint much faster. Then energy systems. So then you look at psychological setting. Makes a difference if 100 people are watching you in the weight room, or 100 beautiful girls are watching you in the weight room, or you're all about by yourself.
Yeah.
Take a look at how much difference it makes. Just film it with a video and see the difference in there. Yeah?
That's funny, because I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
couldn't be more the truth.
Yeah. I had triple jumpers bounding upstairs, and come on guys, competition, come bum bum bum, and then the girls of the national gymnastics team came and said, look at these
Boing,
guys, they're
boing,
bounding.
boing.
And believe it or not, they jump much better than they did before. So
Imagine that.
yeah. We all know it, but that means specificity is you look at the dynamics. For instance, contact time is an important dynamics. If the harness or the sledge is way too heavy, your contact time increases, and it's better to go into the weight room and lift squats. If the hill is too steep, contact everything changes. It doesn't look like sprinting. Go if you want to be strong. Too much of the strength component in there. Go and lift weights to cleans or squats or leg presses, because it doesn't look like sprinting anymore. That's it. So you look at the force time characteristics, you look at angular velocity, you look at biodynamic parameters that you does this, ask yourself, does it look like shot put, does it look like tennis, does it look like javelin, does it look like sprinting? If it doesn't, well, forget about it. So what I also did in the past was taking contact times of bounding, horizontal bounding for speed. Well, the contact time is way longer. Even if you do the fastest bounding, the contact time is still much longer than in sprinting. So it might help you in acceleration phase, where the contact time is still longer than for maximum speed. Or some people they advocate fast bounding for maximum speed. It's not. It's just stupid. It's just too slow.
Yeah.
Even if it looks like very fast, you think, wow, he was fast, and wow, he was fast bounding, man. It just isn't. It just isn't. And that might apply to most jumps. Most jumps, the contact time is what you're learning to apply force in the longer time that you don't have while in competition. So you make things easy on people, And
Yeah.
Basically give them time to think. It's not, but you give them too much time.
Right. What about breaking down parts of the movement and strengthening those?
Well, you break them down. That's fine. You have to build them up again.
Right.
You have to make people very strong in some phases of a movement, but then you make sure that they are strong in all phases of the movement. Otherwise, you get a kind of a weak link in the kinetic chain. So that's
right.
Yeah, you do this kind of imitation exercises where you a certain part of the movement you think. Don't forget that strength is most strength exercises are angle dependent as well. Isometric training is angle dependent, so you use isometric training in 90 degrees, very good. But it doesn't mean you're getting stronger in 30 degrees or in 180 degrees. So it's angular dependent on the angle in which you train. It's also dependent on the velocity. Strength training is also, to a certain extent, velocity dependent. So it depends on which velocity you train. That's why isokinetic training, most of the time, is too slow. It's 300, 400 degrees per second. Well, sprinting and long jump takeoff are between 900 and 1100 degrees per second. So even if it looks fast to you, or it's called fast isokinetic, it's 3 times as slow as executed in your competition movement. So again, the fast isokinetics might be fast for a doctor in sports medicine, but slow for a coach.
Right. But I'm assuming it would be safe to say that breaking down different aspects. So say, I mean, like Verkhoshansky in
Yeah,
his work always had that knee drive
yeah,
movement with the
yeah,
kettlebell. Dr. Yes talks about it with active chords, the pawing action of running that
yeah,
Verkhoshansky talked about and Dr. Yes talks about, and then the actual push off where he talks about lunges. We're taking these different aspects, strengthening them, working on the general strength aspect of it, and then increasing the speed and resistance, and then putting the parts together as a whole
yeah.
is,
That's important.
yeah.
That's important. You could also, let me say, take the whole movement and then what you do is kind of bottom up. So
Right.
take all the parts, make the parts strong, and then combine them into the whole movement instead of breaking down the whole movement, or take the whole movement and focus on some parts there. For me, it doesn't make it that much of a difference. I do both anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I just focus on lifting the knees while running. Or focus now, exaggerate a little bit with the knee lift. Or say, well, we do psoas movements, having the knee lift with resistance somehow, and also having the push. But the push can be also with the horizontal bounding, where you focus on the pushing movement. Or you can do other things. So for me, I do both together, bottom up and top down. I use them both, as a matter of fact.
That's awesome. That's all because we do a lot of that here. With our kids, is it's the
Yeah,
bottom up and working. I mean, because it's predominantly team sports. So if you look at the technical aspect of how to cut and things of that nature, and then working on the knee driving and the paw backing, and then the pushing aspect with different lunges, and then how they
yeah,
actually utilize the movement,
yeah,
and
yeah,
then build the
yeah,
speed, build the speed, build the speed, build the speed, and progress on top of it. And
yeah.
it's
But
really neat to see how much carryover there is to it.
yeah, it is. It is. Well, there is, of course. Otherwise, any other movement, any exercise in the weight room would be useless. I always say, when you enter the weight room, forget about specific training, unless you're a bodybuilder, powerlifter, or weightlifter. Anybody else, forget about specific training because it cannot be specific anymore. Unless you have a huge weight room and you go 30 meters from the blocks in the weight room, that's fine. But normally, when you look at squats, does it look like sprinting? In no way. In no way. You're going vertically in your takeoff with two legs at the same time. You do it with a load on your back, and you're doing it really slow. So how could it help sprinting? So when you start thinking about it, when you enter the weight room, be aware that whatever you do in the weight is not specific training anymore. But then you ask the question, well, is that bad? No, it's not bad at all. Otherwise, I wouldn't never visit the weight room. No, it's not bad at all. But you have to remember, it's not a specific exercise that you do. Even if you take fast lunges with a barbell in your neck or with anything, with any implement that you do there, it's slower than what you do outside on the track running from 30 meters flying anyway, or accelerating.
But those, if we call them general exercises, can have a dramatic impact on what you're actually trying to accomplish.
Yeah, not the dramatic impact. Of course, it depends.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a young athlete and you got thin legs like this, then yeah, general weight exercises will help you to be just increase your overall strength, which in the beginning will help you. Well, I doubt if let's say somebody like Usain Bolt will benefit more from, well, let's say 3 months of weightlifting exercise. I don't think he will be stronger, but to what extent do you disrupt the balance that seems to be perfect for him that he has right now? So the better you become, the more you have to be careful that you don't disrupt what is there.
Right.
That means I do believe in giving something away during a couple of weeks or months, so you can work on other qualities. But you have to be sure it's coming back,
Right.
and not disrupt something for indefinitely. So no long-term damage there. So it's always a fine balance. Huh?
Right. So basically, again, it just comes back to the idea of when you're looking at those general qualities of just give them as much as they need, and because if you give
Yeah,
them too much of it, then all of a sudden you're taking away from what really matters,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then focusing in on more specialized, specific work that is
Yeah.
going to carry over to the actual movement.
Again, it depends on the diagnosis, where they are
Right.
in that phase of their career. If you only general exercise to make them strong, coach will make them strong. You make them strong and strong and strong. And what a disappointment! They don't run faster. They don't. The basketball doesn't become much better. Even if they are stronger now, they look like very fit athletes. But it was just general fitness, which is great. But it doesn't add to their specific skill. They cannot apply it to what they do in competition. On the other hand, you have this specific work only. So it's a high jump. You only do the high jump, the high jump, the high jump from full approach, the high jump, the high jump, the high jump. And in the end, you level off, and well, you get into a motor stereotype. Performance doesn't increase anymore. So then you have to go back to general work. And why not changing these phases? And why not alternating these phases? Sometimes you focus on general work, sometimes on more specific work. Then general work and specific work, so they go or a phase of stabilization, a stage of improvement, a stage of stabilization and improvement technique. And it's always like this. Don't try to increase one thing tremendously and leave the other things behind. You know, it's not increasing the engine of a car and leaving your petrol tank really small. It doesn't
Right.
make sense. So,
Yeah.
or have a driver that's not used to handle a car with this tremendous amount of power.
Yeah.
So you have to increase the quality of the driver, you have to increase the engine, and because you use more petrol, you have to increase the size of the petrol tank and probably use different fuels as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You're not going to give a 16-year-old a Ferrari.
No.
Yeah.
Unless you have too many Ferraris in your garage, then you just give it to play around. But I don't.
No, me neither.
Okay.
I don't have singular Ferrari.
Okay.
But no, so it's basically you look at the general, you build the general. Then
Yeah.
you look at the specific actions and needs, and you
Yeah.
build on top of that general. And
Yeah.
you can break down the techniques and build those strengths after the general has been performed. It's interesting on the Canadian Coaching Center website. There's I can't even remember the name of it, and it's going to eat at me all day. But Bondarchuk had a work on there that was like the summary of a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And he had, at the end, it was literally like that long, like 3 paragraphs maybe,
Yeah.
where he talked about, he looked at a longitudinal study where it
Yeah.
was group X did 80-20, 80% general, 20%
Yeah.
specific, and then
Yeah.
vice versa. And the ability to increase performance using
Yeah.
specialized and specific exercises
Yeah.
was almost 50% greater.
Yeah.
And that's, that kind of drives a lot of what I do, looking, because really in the weight room, when we look at the sports that I work with, I'm not going to really be able to improve a kid's swim stroke.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really going to be able to improve the technique of a kid's jump shot.
Exactly.
I'm not going to be able to improve how our tennis players, technically hit a serve or a backhand or whatever it may be. But we can strengthen the muscles that are involved with it, build the general, work on specific exercises that are going to help those
Yeah.
movements, and then kind of, I don't really know another way to say it, but kind of get out of the way and let the coaches work on the technical, tactical aspect, because as Val so greatly said, as you know, Val,
Yeah.
rule number one is skill is most important, and with no skill, there is no athlete. So, I mean,
Yeah. Absolutely true.
you're not going to be able to make a Subaru go, 250 miles an hour. If the kid can't play, the kid can't play.
No. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. You see kids who can barely sitting in the starting block like this with crossed arms, and they want to do all kind of bounding and harness running and everything, all kind of sophisticated drills and exercises with kids who can barely hold a tennis racket straight, who can barely hit a ball and do all kind of super maximum things. It's again, it's anxiety with the coaches sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Keep it simple, stupid, right?
yeah, absolutely, that's true. You see the most complex training programs where, in the end, it doesn't really matter how complex or how simple it is. You're judged on the outcome of the training, not how many factors you take into account and how complicated you make it. So I give a lecture sometimes, and people say, "Wow, a lot of variables. How does your workout look like?" They give a workout. That's simple. Yeah, but where does it conflict with what I've said before? It never conflicts with what I've said before. Just keep it simple. It doesn't mean I do in the weight room and go with 25 different exercises in one day. The next day, another 25 exercises. That's not what I said. That's not what I said before. So yeah, it is complex, and that's why you have to keep it as simple as possible. Otherwise, you go overboard. If you follow your complexity, you would be training 20 hours a day just to fulfill all the variables in there and to touch into all of them. So you go into what do you cook for dinner? Okay, we eat Chinese today. I thought so. But why not a pizza in there? Or French food? Or why not pancakes? And all this together doesn't mix very well. That's right.
Right.
So when you cook food, you cook one meal. You don't cook French and Chinese and Japanese and all these different styles in the same dinner. You don't do that, and that's what most people do. They want afraid a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of that, and in the end, it doesn't taste like anything.
Right. I gave a talk and I put kind of my thought process on a continuum and said that the specific stuff is what really matters, and the goal is to basically find things on a continuum that are going to lead you from this general directly to this specific.
Yeah.
And even if it's something as general as a squat, walking uphill for general conditioning, if it leads you to this specific continuum, then it's a general specific exercise. And even if, in the early part with a developing athlete, you have them in the weight room doing, 20, 25 exercises just because they're so weak that they need to work elbow extension, elbow flexion, wrist extension, back extension, spinal flexion extension, hip extension and flexion in all four means. And, that if it puts you on that continuum to develop this kid into the proper direction, I guess is the word, then you're on the right track. But if you're just going to say, I've got a 12-year-old kid and we're going to do some really neat overspeed work and all these crazy different exercises, and there's no reason to where you're going for your end result, if you're jumping past all of that, you're just a detriment to the poor kid.
Yeah.
And it's
very good.
Very good. It's something that I think a lot of coaches, especially over here, miss the boat on because they want to do so much of the the cool stuff.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. That's it.
That it.
That's it. Yeah.
They take more into account. They're so worried about what looks cool and what's going to entertain these kids, and they're not.
New trend or work
yeah.
with kettlebells. No, they buy a kettlebell, what kind of kettlebell? Why? Because somebody said so, or this is something new. Follow the latest trend, and then after 1 year, no world record. Okay, forget about the trend. There's always a new trend coming up, basically from fitness.
Right. And if you can actually tell me why, and show me why, and show me what is actually going to benefit the performance of this kid. I mean, because listen, their general health is very important,
Yeah.
But that needs to be taken into account with the volume and the intensity and the duration of the training.
Yeah.
That you're not beating them up and you're not setting them up for situations where these, I hate the term, these overuse injuries.
Yeah.
I think it's more of under recovery and over stress than it is because, I mean, we're designed to be used. You know what I mean? Like our bodies are designed to be used. But if you just constantly, and you don't allow them to recover, and these kids stay stuck in these sympathetic states because training obviously is not their primary, you know, thing to do with their time. They're 18 to 22-year-old kids, so they're stressed out because of it. And B, you never let them recover from it. That's when you beat them up.
Yeah.
It's really it's crazy to me, because if you could actually sit back and monitor it and know that they're improving, and then figure out, well, exercise A is easy for athlete A. They're really not getting the benefit from it. We either need to change the volume, intensity, or the means of the exercise being used. If you can just take a step back and do that, it almost to me is just common sense progression.
Yeah.
You know.
And don't forget, it's easy to used to linear thinking. If we do this, then that happens. But if we do one, there's an impact on A. But if you do one, it has also an impact on B. It might be a negative impact on
right.
D. So it's unfortunately it's complex, and most of the time it's not linear. This is the problem.
Right.
This is the problem. I used to have one athlete. She's an 800 meter running, 156, 65 in the 800 meters. Second in the world championships a couple of times, and she came to me, and she worked out 5 days a week only one time a day. And she came from a background in middle distance running, and everything over, say, 10 seconds I find boring and slow. So for the first time training an 800 meter runner was kind of new to me, and she came from a background of working out 7 days a week, twice a day, and then 2 hours, 2 hours and a half. But I'm a sprint coach, so I worked out 5 times a week, and 1 hour and a half, but on higher intensity and only quality. So first question in the first couple, am I doing enough? Am I doing enough? So that's not the question. If you're doing enough. The question is, you don't get a medal for doing enough, you get a medal for running fast. Let's make sure she runs fast. Then after a couple of months, she won her first medal in the World Indoor Championship, first medal ever in a personal best. She said, you think you're doing enough now? Yeah, okay. She sort of joked a bit. But then she asked me, Henk, should I train? I train 5 times a week and 2 days off. What if I would train tomorrow on Saturday as well, and training 6 times a week? No. Interesting thought. So, because it's only 20% more training. Yeah, 20% more training. But think about it. Instead of 2 days recovery, you have now 1 day recovery. And that 1 day recovery, or 2 days, is not for your muscle. Then you recover so quick, after a couple of hours, you can start again. Your muscles can. Your bones and ligaments and tendons cannot. They need more time for recovery, especially yours, because you're not that young anymore. You had a background of just pounding and hard training. And then she leveled off. And so this is the problem. You do 20% more with 50% of the recuperation time. And once again, it's not the muscle or the autonomic nervous system. It's a passive movement apparatus, which in the end is causing most problems in middle distance athletes. It's not the heart or depletion of glycogen that causes trouble. It's the Achilles tendon, it's the metatarsal bones, it's the heel spur, things like this, or shin splints. That's what causes problems. So that's what the 2 days are for. So 20% more and 50% less recuperation. That's the problem. Not only 20% more, it's the 50% less recovery time that you have. This is the problem. Well, then that year outdoors she won 156 of personal best. So okay, yeah. So it's a quality. Don't only run what you need and not train as much as necessary and not as much as possible. It's always do everything with a goal or with a purpose, and don't write things down thoughtlessly. And then in the end, when people ask you, why did you do this? And, well, I did it because the body is great at making up stories afterwards, but it's less good at making stories before. So afterwards, I did it because No, you have a clear goal what you want, and do as much as necessary. So 5 times, and sometimes I must admit 2 days, 2 times a day, a long endurance run in the morning. Times 1 hour and a half, or 7 times 2 hours, 7 times 2 times 2 hours, 2 hours and a half. Tremendous decrease in training volume, but increase in training intensity and quality of the training. And that was more than a second PR with more than a second in 800 meters on that level is quite a jump.
Yeah.
And she made a PR in the 400 meters as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, exercise is a drug. Training is a drug.
It is, definitely.
Your aspirin comment was dead on with everything that we talk about, and it's we've used it, and I don't know if I talked about with you last time or not, but we use it kind of a little more of an extreme example, being you don't give somebody chemo for a cold,
No, exactly. But that's why you talk about the therapeutic window in my weblog. I also talked about training and looking at if exercise is a drug. Then when you have a headache, you don't take 10 aspirins. You only take that one.
Right.
So you look at a therapeutic window there, and then you take as much as necessary, and again, not as much as possible, because you have 10 tablets or 10 pills in your body. So why not take them all then? Well, that's the reason why. So you define it all by saying exercise is a drug.
Yeah. Hank, as always, man, it's a pleasure talking with you. This was really fantastic. This is going to knock people's socks off.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Hank. You have a fantastic day.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.